Hi, I'm Dale Popovich and welcome to my studio. What I want to discuss here today is my tools for the watercolorist. And I'm going to run from the brushes to the paints to the paper and a couple of small things here and there that will be very essential to you. The first thing I want to cover are brushes. I've had many of these brushes for over 35 years. I suggest getting real hair brushes over synthetic. They load better, but if you can't afford the real hair brushes, I suggest getting a real hair synthetic blend. Those should suffice. This is a 1-inch flat brush. It's a very good brush. It's a very old brush. But it's still very good to work with watercolor. The second brush here I have is a 1/2-inch flat. It's kind of a utility brush for me, but I do use it occasionally. But these 7 or 8 brushes that I'm using are my favorite brushes. I have an array of brushes, but I do use only these most of the time. This one here is a number 12 round brush. It's a great brush for laying down small areas that are secondary to the larger masses. I have a number 8 brush here, round. I have a number 4 round. As you can tell, I've used these quite a bit. And I have a liner, or what they call a rigger, and this is a number 2. And I use that for very small detail when I put things in like that, or branches, this sort of thing. And I also have a oil painter's brush. It's a used one. In fact, one of my students threw it away years ago. I picked it out of the garbage. I use this brush for lifting, and it's an excellent brush. And the last thing I have here is a toothbrush. You can go to the dollar store or whatever. It's a medium toothbrush, not a real soft one, and it's flat across the top. It doesn't have all the different variations of levels. Just a simple toothbrush can do the trick. The second thing I want to discuss are my paints. I use white gouache occasionally. It depends on whether you're entering a show that allows it or doesn't allow it. If it doesn't allow it, you don't use the white gouache. But it's by Winsor Newton and it's permanent white gouache. I use that occasionally. The name brands that I have here are the ones that I use most of the time. This is a local brand by Dick Blick. It's a very good brand for a house brand. I use Winsor Newton, which is very good. I use the Winsor Newton professional grade, not the academy grade or the student grade. I use another brand by Talens. It's a Holland brand name, very good brand. It's not of a real high quality, but it is a real good paint to start off with or to continue using later on. And then finally I use Holbein. Holbein is an excellent name brand. But those are the 4 different name brands that I use in my paintings. Now, some of the materials that I use. This is a 16-cell Slant Tray. And as you notice, I don't wash it out that often. I don't clean it out every time I use it. It's like your typewriter keys. I want to know where the paints are without having to look. So you don't change the typewriter keys every time you type a letter. So I do spray this before I lay down new paint. I always lay down new paint when I start a fresh painting. But the dried paint can only be used for tinting for the most part. Okay, but it doesn't have the intensity and the flow that it comes with right out of the tube. I have a cellulose sponge. It's very absorbent to watercolor. I don't use a nylon sponge, but this, you can get these at any hardware store that you wish to purchase it at. Water container, any water container will do. Usually I have 2 while I'm painting, so I have extra clean water with me. I have a spray. This is just a simple mister, and what I did with the mister is that I put a needle in the end of it and twist it around because I don't like the fine spray. I actually want it to spit random water patterns, which is a very good thing to have. This is by Butcher's Tray. It's enamel. It's probably the best that you can mix your watercolors on. They have many things out there now that are plastic with the containers or cells going around it. That's quite sufficient because it has a cap that you can carry it home with if you're out painting. But this is what I prefer to use. And this is probably one of the best. I've had this for a long time. Now, this is an interesting piece of equipment for the watercolorist. It's a watercolor slant tray with all the colors you could possibly put in. It also has a tray to mix your paints on. You could take this outside. And you end up with twice the amount, almost equal to the slant tray, or to the enamel tray. But this is quite a nice handy little utility thing. Easy to carry around back and forth, possibly if you're taking classes or you're going outside and painting in plein air. But it's a wonderful piece of equipment to have. Some other things that you'll need is some regular masking tape. Don't buy color masking tape for the simple fact that the color of the tape will throw your colors off in your painting. So try to have real masking tape that is this yellowish color or neutral. You'll need a razor blade, which I will eventually show you in one of my demos for scraping and for scratching through the watercolor. It's a good thing to have with you. The other tool I use sandpaper, and I sand the pigment a little bit off the paper. It's used for lightening things or creating perhaps glistening little sparkles on water, but it is a handy little tool to have if something is needed like this. It's 240 grit, and it's a very useful tool. And you'll also need paper towels. They do help terrifically from your drips or picking up things that you want to adjust in value or intensity of color. Wonderful tool to have. The types of watercolor paper I use are Arches 300 pound, rough cold press, and I also use the Fabriano rough or cold press. Occasionally I'll use hot press. The hot press is very smooth and very slick, where the cold press or rough has a nice tooth to it. Sometimes your reference that you're painting will dictate the type of paper that you use. Now, the type of pencil I use an HB pencil, something that's not too dark, something that's not too light. And I use a kneaded eraser mainly because it's not abrasive if I need to erase something on the watercolor paper. But these are my two drawing instruments that I always use. And last but not least, I have one attached to a board here, watercolor. It's already drawn out. And I've attached it to masonite board. It's a very thin piece of board, as you can see. And I have various size masonite boards depending on the size of the painting that I want to do. And when I am starting to paint, I always paint off flat, depending on the subject matter and how I want to handle it. But I would say 8 times out of 10, my painting is flat when I begin. I stand while I'm painting, and I begin blocking in large areas and so forth, and I don't want it to run down. Other times, I will put it on the easel, or if I'm past the first part of the painting, I'll put it on a tabletop easel, and I will sit or stand while I paint. And this easel is a wonderful easel. The easel actually collapses that you can carry it. It's made by Royal Land Nickel, and the easel collapses down. It comes with a carrying case in most cases, and I believe it's about $39 for the complete kit. You may be able to buy these separately without the case, but check your local art stores. So these are my essential tools for painting successful watercolors. If you need a complete list, you can go to my website. Thank you.